The quest to become irresistible to others, to exert a magnetic pull that draws people toward us, is as ancient as human society itself. We've been taught to focus on physical appearance, charm, or social status as the key factors in attraction. Yet beneath these surface elements lies a more fundamental psychological principle that Sigmund Freud identified over a century ago, the pleasure principle. Understanding and ethically applying this concept can transform how others experience your presence, creating a form of attraction far more powerful than conventional approaches to appeal. Freud described the pleasure principle as one of the mind's primary driving forces, our innate tendency to seek pleasure and avoid pain. While this might seem obvious, Freud's insight went deeper. He recognized that this principle operates largely unconsciously, guiding our attractions, aversions, and behaviors without our awareness. We don't rationally decide what we find attractive. Our unconscious mind makes these determinations based on complex associations between people, experiences, and feelings of pleasure or pain. This understanding provides the foundation for a more sophisticated approach to becoming irresistible. Rather than focusing exclusively on how you look or what you say, you can become attuned to how you make others feel. When someone associates you with pleasure and the absence of pain, not just physically but emotionally and psychologically, they develop an unconscious attraction that operates more powerfully than conscious appreciation of your qualities. The first principle of applying this understanding involves presence. When you interact with someone, are you fully engaged, or is your attention fragmented? Neuroscience confirms what Freud intuited. Being truly seen, heard, and valued creates a neurochemical response associated with pleasure. When you offer undivided attention, putting away your phone, maintaining appropriate eye contact, genuinely listening rather than waiting to speak, you trigger positive neurological responses in others. This quality of presence has become increasingly rare and therefore increasingly valuable. In a world of constant distraction, the person who can maintain focused attention creates an oasis of pleasure for whoever they're engaging with. This isn't about technique or manipulation, but about the genuine ability to be fully present, which requires developing your own capacity for attention and engagement. The second principle involves the balance between validation and challenge. Freud recognized that pleasure isn't just about immediate gratification, but includes the satisfaction of psychological growth. People are drawn to those who both affirm their existing self-concept and gently challenge them to expand beyond current limitations. This balance creates a powerful attraction dynamic, the pleasure of being accepted combined with the pleasure of becoming more. In practice, this means developing the ability to genuinely see others' positive qualities while also perceiving their potential. When you can reflect both what someone already is and what they could become, you create a uniquely compelling form of recognition. This isn't about empty flattery or harsh criticism, but about offering a vision of the other person that's simultaneously accepting and expansive. The third principle concerns the regulation of emotional states. Freud observed that we're powerfully attracted to people who can help us manage our emotional experiences, increasing positive feelings and reducing negative ones. This doesn't mean simply telling jokes or avoiding difficult topics. It means developing emotional intelligence that allows you to respond appropriately to others' emotional states, helping them process difficult feelings and amplify positive ones. This emotional attunement requires developing your own emotional awareness and regulation capacity. You cannot help others navigate their emotional landscape if you're flooded by your own unprocessed feelings or disconnected from your emotional experience. The ability to stay present with both your own emotions and others creates a rare form of safety that people unconsciously seek in relationships. The fourth principle involves the balance between predictability and surprise. Freud recognized that the mind seeks both patterns it can rely on and novel experiences that provide fresh stimulation. People are drawn to those who offer a dependable emotional foundation, while still introducing elements of positive surprise. This combination creates both security and excitement, a particularly compelling pleasure dynamic. In relationships, this means being reliably yourself, someone whose core values and responses can be counted on, while maintaining curiosity and openness that allows for growth and discovery. The person who is entirely predictable eventually becomes boring. The person who is completely unpredictable eventually becomes anxiety-provoking. The sweet spot between these extremes creates lasting attraction. The fifth principle involves ethical boundaries. Contrary to popularized versions of Freud that emphasize unleashing all desires, his mature theory recognized the necessity of appropriate boundaries for psychological health. People are unconsciously drawn to those who maintain ethical boundaries, who seek connection without engulfment, who can be vulnerable without becoming dependent, who respect others' autonomy while still creating closeness. This balance requires developing your own psychological maturity, the capacity to desire connection while respecting separation, to be authentic without oversharing, to be present without intrusive. These qualities create a form of attraction based on unconscious recognition of psychological health, rather than manipulation or neediness. One of Freud's most valuable insights was understanding the role of unconscious association in attraction. We're drawn to people who remind us of positive early relationships, or who seem to offer healing for difficult ones. This doesn't mean mimicking others' parents or partners, but rather developing qualities associated with secure attachment, reliability, emotional responsiveness, appropriate care without control. Practically, this means becoming aware of how you impact others. Do you leave people feeling more secure or more anxious, more connected or more isolated, more capable or more inadequate? The unconscious mind constantly assesses these impacts, creating attraction toward those who enhance our sense of security, connection, and capability, even if we can't articulate why we're drawn to them. Another key insight from Freud involves what he called the narcissism of small differences, our tendency to be most sensitive to differences from those who are otherwise most like us. Applied to attraction, this means understanding the balance between similarity and difference. People are generally drawn to those who share their fundamental values and worldview, while offering complementary differences that create growth opportunities. This principle suggests developing authentic self-awareness rather than attempting to become what you think others want. When you know your own values, preferences, strengths, and growth edges, you naturally attract those who resonate with your authentic qualities while offering complementary differences. This creates relationships based on mutual growth rather than performance or compatibility in superficial traits. Freud's understanding of transference, the unconscious projection of past relationships onto current ones, offers another insight into becoming irresistible. When you develop qualities associated with secure attachment and healthy relationships, you activate positive transference in others. They unconsciously experience you as someone who can provide what was missing or enhance what was positive in their formative relationships. This doesn't involve manipulating others' perceptions, but developing genuine psychological maturity. As you work through your own attachment wounds and develop secure attachment capacities, you naturally become someone who offers others a corrective emotional experience. This creates a powerful attraction that operates largely unconsciously. The pleasure principle operates not just in relationship dynamics, but in environments. Freud recognized that environments themselves create emotional associations that influence our experience of the people in them, creating physical and emotional environments associated with pleasure, not just sensory pleasure, but psychological ease, interest, and safety, enhances how people experience you. This doesn't necessarily mean luxury or extravagance. It means becoming attuned to how environments impact emotional states and creating contexts that allow for authentic connection. The person who can create a sense of sanctuary, whether in a physical space, a conversation, or an emotional atmosphere, becomes associated with the pleasure that space provides. Freud's concept of sublimation, the redirection of primal drives into culturally valued achievements, offers another pathway to becoming irresistible. When you channel your energy into developing genuine excellence in areas you value, you create a form of attraction based on mastery and passion rather than deliberate appeal. People are drawn to those who have developed their capacities and found meaningful channels for their energy. This form of attraction doesn't depend on conventional measures of success, but on the authentic development of your capabilities and their application toward meaningful purposes. The person fully engaged with their unique capacities and contributions creates a form of appeal that doesn't diminish with time or comparison, because it emerges from genuine development rather than performance. The pleasure principle operates particularly powerfully through contrast. Freud noted that relief from pain creates more intense pleasure than consistent comfort. Applied to attraction, this means understanding the power of being someone who can help others move from negative to positive emotional states. This isn't about creating problems to solve them, but about developing the capacity to help transform difficult experiences. The person who can remain steady during others' distress, who can listen without judgment to difficult emotions, who can offer perspective that transforms anxiety into understanding. This person creates a particularly compelling form of attraction based on the relief of psychological pain. This capacity requires developing your own emotional resilience and perspective-taking abilities. Freud's recognition of humor as a sophisticated psychological mechanism offers another insight into becoming irresistible. Humor that helps process difficult truths or transform perspective creates not just momentary pleasure, but psychological relief. Developing the capacity for humor that illuminates rather than evades, that connects rather than separates, that lightens without trivializing. This creates a form of attraction based on psychological liberation. This isn't about becoming a comedian, but developing the perspective flexibility that allows for playfulness even amid life's challenges. The person who can help others hold their experiences more lightly without dismissing their importance offers a particular form of pleasure, the relief of taking things seriously without being crushed by them. One of Freud's most profound insights was recognizing that the unconscious mind responds more to emotional truth than social performance. People are unconsciously drawn to authenticity, not performative authenticity that seeks validation, but the genuine congruence between internal experience and external expression. This alignment creates trust at an unconscious level that no amount of deliberate impression management can achieve. Developing this authentic presence requires ongoing self-awareness work. As you become more conscious of your internal experiences and more skilled at expressing them appropriately, you develop a quality of presence that others unconsciously register as trustworthy. This doesn't mean expressing every passing feeling, but developing congruence between your inner and outer worlds. The pleasure principle operates not just through what you offer, but through what you receive. Freud recognized that receiving pleasure is as important as giving it in psychological development. Applied to becoming irresistible, this means developing the capacity to genuinely receive what others offer, their ideas, their care, their unique perspectives and contributions. The person who can be impacted by others, who can show that they matter, who can receive with appreciation rather than entitlement or discomfort, this person creates a particularly powerful form of attraction. In a culture that often emphasizes giving over receiving, developing the capacity for gracious, appreciative reception creates relationships where others feel their impact matters. Freud's understanding of ambivalence, the coexistence of opposing feelings toward the same person, offers another insight into becoming irresistible. Rather than trying to be perfect or please everyone, developing the capacity to allow others their full range of responses to you creates psychological safety. When people sense they don't have to pretend to only have positive feelings to maintain connection with you, they experience a particular form of freedom. This requires developing your own capacity to tolerate others' mixed feelings without either defensive withdrawal or anxious people-pleasing. The security to know that relationships can contain the full range of human emotions, including occasional disappointment or frustration, without threatening the connection itself, creates a rare form of safety that people unconsciously seek. One of Freud's most valuable contributions was recognizing the role of unconscious communication in human interaction. Beyond the words we say, we constantly exchange emotional information through tone, expression, body language, and energetic presence. Developing awareness of this nonverbal dimension allows you to communicate emotional attunement that others register as pleasure, often without consciously knowing why they feel good around you. This isn't about technique, but about genuine presence and attention. As you develop awareness of your own emotional states and how they manifest physically, you become more attuned to these dimensions in others. This attunement creates a sense of being emotionally seen that many people rarely experience and unconsciously crave. The pleasure principle operates through memory and anticipation, as well as immediate experience. Freud recognized that we constantly revise our memories and project our expectations, creating emotional associations that extend beyond actual interactions. Becoming someone who creates positive anticipation, reliable enough to trust, but surprising enough to look forward to, establishes attraction that operates even in your absence. This means being mindful of how you end interactions and what you seed for future ones. The person who concludes conversations in ways that leave others feeling valued and creates natural openings for future connection establishes anticipatory pleasure that enhances attraction between interactions. Freud's understanding of pleasure necessarily included his concept of the reality principle, the mind's capacity to delay immediate gratification for greater long-term satisfaction. Applied to becoming irresistible, this means embodying the balance between immediate responsiveness and long-term reliability. People are unconsciously drawn to those who can offer immediate emotional presence while also maintaining consistency across time. Developing this balance requires psychological maturity, the capacity to be fully present in the moment while also maintaining awareness of the bigger relational picture creates a form of attraction based on both immediacy and depth. This combination is particularly compelling because it satisfies both immediate emotional needs and longer-term security needs. One of Freud's most misunderstood but valuable insights involves the relationship between restraint and desire. Contrary to simplistic readings of his work, Freud recognized that appropriate boundaries actually enhance attraction rather than limiting it. Applied to becoming irresistible, this means understanding that attraction flourishes in the space between availability and mystery, between expression and restraint. This balance requires self-awareness and intentionality. The person who shares themselves authentically while maintaining appropriate privacy, who expresses interest without demand, who offers connection without engulfment. This person creates the psychological space where attraction can develop without either frustration or satiation, extinguishing it. Ultimately, becoming irresistible through the pleasure principle isn't about techniques or manipulation, but about psychological development. As you become more conscious of your own patterns, more emotionally regulated, more authentically present, and more ethically attuned to others, you naturally become someone who offers psychological pleasure rather than pain. This creates attraction not as a goal, but as a byproduct of genuine growth. This developmental approach means focusing less on how others perceive you and more on how you impact them emotionally. The questions become, do people feel more like themselves in your presence or less? Do they feel more capable or more inadequate, more connected or more isolated, more understood or more judged? As you develop the capacity to create positive emotional impacts without agenda or dependence on outcomes, you naturally become magnetic. The most compelling manifestation of the pleasure principle in relationships isn't about intensity, but about sustainability. Freud recognized that while intense pleasure captures attention, sustainable pleasure creates lasting bonds. Becoming someone who reliably enhances others' experience, not through grand gestures, but through consistent positive presence, creates attraction that deepens rather than diminishes over time. This sustainability requires developing qualities that don't deplete with use or familiarity. Genuine curiosity, emotional generosity, ethical boundaries, authentic presence. Unlike physical beauty or social status, these qualities actually become more compelling through extended exposure because their positive impact accumulates over time rather than habituating. The most powerful application of the pleasure principle in becoming irresistible involves integration, developing the capacity to incorporate seemingly contradictory qualities into a coherent presence. The person who can be both strong and vulnerable, both playful and serious, both self-sufficient and connected, both consistent and evolving. This person creates a particularly compelling form of attraction based on the pleasure of witnessing healthy integration. This integration doesn't happen automatically but through conscious psychological development. As you become aware of your internal polarities and develop the capacity to embody seemingly opposite qualities as appropriate to the situation, you create a form of attraction based on psychological wholeness rather than one-dimensional appeal. The ultimate expression of becoming irresistible through the pleasure principle isn't about maximizing others' attraction to you, but about creating relationships where pleasure flows reciprocally. Freud recognized that mature relationships involve mutual enhancement rather than one-sided admiration. As you develop the capacity to both give and receive, to be, both impact and be impacted, you create connections based on mutual pleasure rather than performance or pursuit. This reciprocity creates the most sustainable form of attraction, one based not on maintaining an irresistible image, but on participating in relationships that genuinely enhance everyone involved. This shifts the focus from being admired to creating connections where authentic engagement generates natural pleasure for all participants. In this light, becoming irresistible isn't about techniques or strategies, but about genuine psychological development. It's about becoming someone whose presence enhances others' experience, not through deliberate manipulation, but through authentic engagement. As you develop these capacities, you naturally become someone others are drawn to, not because you're trying to attract them, but because relating with you genuinely improves their experience of themselves and their lives.